Yes, yes. What is good? Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Wednesday evening on the East Coast, and I think Wednesday afternoon on the West Coast. This is Patrick Danko from the Human Design Perspective, where we have entrepreneurs and thought leaders come on the show to share their journey. We think that there's power in their journey. We really want to see where people have been, the obstacles that they've overcome, and then how they're sharing that wealth of knowledge to the world, to everyone, to their people. And we're going to get raw with it because it's about getting raw and going from raw to reality when you share your story. And today we have Kayla joining us. Kayla, how you doing today?
I'm doing so good. I'm really happy to be here and I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yes, yes, I am too. I'm very excited that you're here. I want to see where it goes. I want to give an introduction, and Kayla and I have spoken before. But Kayla is a spiritual mindset coach. My apologies. And she hosts her own podcast as well on her channel called Living in Fierce Alignment, right? It's a go-to place to learn more about human design, gene keys, mindset, manifestation, spirituality. And we're going to touch on some of that. But before we do, why don't you kind of let people know who you are, who's sitting here with us today?
Yeah, so my name's Kayla. I live in North Vancouver, BC right now, and I've been in the personal growth sort of realm, I would say, for like the last almost 8 years. And I
Okay.
got into human design in the summer of 2019. And so just, to keep it short and sweet, really got into the personal growth world, like courses, seminars, and then I was so inspired that I wanted to be a coach. And so then I started getting certifications like NLP, hypnosis, getting certified in human design, Reiki, all of that fun stuff. And it's really been the last couple of years, in particular last year when I got deep into human design, that really shifted my life and my business. So that's kind of a summary. And it's sort of funny because I feel like this happens too, where, I really got into human design, and as I was growing my business, I ended up being like my own guinea pig, obviously. Like I'm someone who like struggled in growing their business, and I don't say that with any shame, even though I had to process that shame. But it was like I get to use human design and help people, with who they are meant to be. It's not like, oh, this is what worked for me. So that's something that I really love about this work, is that it's very inclusive, and I find that really refreshing. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me.
I love that. And we're going to dive into it today, too. I mean, we'll speak to it at a high level. My audience is kind of like introductory human design people. But, we wanted to talk about things through the lens of human design and just at a general level, talk about you as a generator, 6-2 generator, how your experience has been. You mentioned entrepreneurship, right? And just talking about that and some of the challenges that conditioning has and how we truly find alignment and, how it's been for you as a generator finding alignment pre-human design and after that as well. And there's a few more we're going to get into, but why don't we open up with how has that experience been for you, just kind of learning about the human design system and experiencing it?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, so I'll just kind of talk a little bit about my profile. So the 6-2 profile is the sixth line is known as like the role model. So they're at the top of the six lines that we use in human design to make the profiles. And the 2 line is really about acquiring wisdom and being very natural, like kind of gaining wisdom and having this bit of like hermit reflective energy. And so I notice in my life, like I do naturally acquire wisdom, and then I want to like role model it and take it forth into the collective and like take it to the next level. Like there's this visionary aspect. So being
Yeah.
a sacral generator, I found that, the sixth line has these 3 phases, where the
Yes.
first phase of your life, like 0 to 30 years old, it acts as a 3 line, and the 3 line is very much like trial and error. So I had a lot of trial and error, and I was always frustrated because I was doing work that I didn't want to do. And if you know anything about the sacral, like it's literally charged and just nurtured by doing the things that you love doing. So
Right.
here I am, like literally worked like 20 different jobs, and also just legitimate careers too, like as a teacher, personal training business. Like, I tried so many things, and it was around the age of 29 that I started my coaching business. And that was like my Saturn return. And that's when I was on the roof at the sixth line. And then I was like, wow, this makes sense now. And I'm sharing what I've learned from the first like trial and error years of my life. And so I feel like when I found human design, what happened was I had this reason for why I was so frustrated. I
Okay.
thought there was like something wrong with me, and I was like, okay, I have these these career paths and these things that I'm doing, and I'm not fully excited. And I guess that's what you're supposed to do. You go to university, you get a degree, and then you work, and then you pay off the loans that you took to go to school, and then so on. And it just wasn't for me. And then when I really started to drill in, like, Kayla, you are literally designed to do what you love doing. And that's how you're going to be of service to the collective and to the people that you work with and the people that are your friends and family in your life, like not just entrepreneurs. And so I really started to tap into this level of like self-responsibility and realizing the impact that I had. And so this is why I really started to take this 6-line energy of like embodying the wisdom that I had and like sharing that, because that's literally what I'm designed to do. So I think that once I discovered human design, I really tapped into like this next level of self-compassion. And I can talk a little bit more about that as well, because that's my conscious sun and earth gates are 36-6. So 36, the highest expression is compassion. So that's literally the essence of my sharing in my entrepreneurial journey. So that's a little story on how I got into that and how it shifted my life. It was like a really big permission slip is what it was.
Yeah, no, and I love that you shared that. I mean, there's so much insight in what you said, but it's exactly that, right? It gives you this permission slip to kind of be who you are, unapologetically hold that, and not worry about, oh my God, am I doing this wrong? Should I be doing this differently? I think I should be doing this, which drives people insane oftentimes, right? And when you talk about your design to as a generator with the sacral, like a lot of generators, I feel I'm a manifesting generator. I wanted to talk to you about waiting to respond, right? Because you have this abundance of energy and you want to go and you're trying different things and you can, but how do you deal with this waiting to respond? Because what I've noticed, and this is a challenge for me at times too, I want something to come in, I'm waiting for it. I know if I go do it, I can get it. So I'll go out and do it. But what it does is gives me this positive reinforcement. Like it kind of says, well, okay, well, you can still go out and get it if you want to. And it kind of gets stuck between like, well, how do I know when to wait? And how do I know when to go out? Because I know if I go out and get it, I get rewarded. So it starts to create a gray area for me. So how have you dealt with that as a generator?
I feel that for you, because you're a manifesting generator, you're going to have this mix between waiting to respond and then this informing and initiating, right? So you can, I feel like energetically, you can get away with the initiating. But for me, when I go and I initiate, it doesn't end well. Like I get burnt out. And so I actually have so many things to say about this, because
Please do.
Waiting to respond as a sacral generator it requires a lot of patience. You know, like there's this conditioning from society around like go out and get it, like very like alpha masculine energy of like just go get it done. Like you get praised for the more things that you do. So it's really been interesting to hold myself back. And what I've really been contemplating is like waiting to respond. But what I noticed is I was getting stuck in this cycle of responding to my own ideas rather than responding to the environment. So what would happen is let's say I had an idea to launch a program, and I'd be excited about this idea. This idea did not come from my external environment. It literally came from my own head. And then I go and I like literally create everything like sacral energy. I'm lit up. I'm excited. And then I'll go and I would launch the program or the offer, and there would be crickets. Right. There would be no engagement because there was no co-creation, collaboration with the universe on where that idea came from. So what I've been doing now is I've definitely noticed lately I've been getting a lot more ideas, and I'm like, where did this idea come from? Because I'm not gonna start doing things when it didn't come from outside of me. So I started sharing. It's kind of funny because I started informing, right? Which is interesting because I have a completely open throat. So I would start informing and sort of sharing these ideas and sort of see what my audience, you know, people on Instagram or on my podcast channel, how they would react to my idea. Because then I would be like, oh, because then their reactions or their feedback would actually give me something to respond to. And then it's a co-creative process with the universe, right? Okay. So that was one thing that I really noticed. And the other thing I really noticed, and this can happen with any type, but I definitely noticed it with the sacral, is what we call, and I learned this from my human design program, so I'm not going to like coin this or take credit for it, but it's called the agenda issue. Mm-hmm. So there's this false, so it's like this false sense of satisfaction based off of like, oh, I'm like responding to this thing, I'm going to go and do it in order to X, Y, and Z, right? Like, let's say, for example, you get a job opportunity and they're paying really well, but you don't like the work that you're doing. You're like, oh, I'm gonna do this in order to get that money, but it's not actually an integral, sacral yes. Right? Or it's
Yes.
like, oh, I'm gonna go and do all this extra work because then if I show up and I get acknowledged for working so hard, then more people will see me and want to work with me. So it's like an in order to, and it's not like out of the pure joy of your sacral energy. So I've also been playing with this. There's like, what am I responding to? Am I responding to my own ideas? And then the other part of like the agenda, like, am I doing this with an agenda because I want a specific result and it's not coming from this pure pleasure of my sacral energy? So those are some of the things that I've really been playing with, and it's been hard. It's hard to wait because we want things like quickly, you know, we want to move on, we want to evolve, and it's just the natural pressure of being human. But it's not like we don't always know what's right and what's best. If we knew, then we would already have it, right? So there's something to like unfold there, and that takes patience.
It takes a lot of patience, and I love that you talked about this agenda issue, and perhaps we can tie it into the next thing that I was thinking about. Because when I think about what you said, I think about entrepreneurs who, when they start business, I feel like we have good intentions. We want to help. It's coming from a good place. We want to, provide this active service through things that we've learned. I'm a 4/6, so I have that like phase, that 3 phase as well. But then sometimes I feel, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, like sometimes we compromise what we do because maybe we're not making as much money right away, or we're not making money quick enough. And you and I have talked about this before. So then we shift to, okay, what do I have to do now to drive more sales, to make more money, to make money quickly? And I almost feel like then we start to lead, the priority becomes the scaling, the growing, the money, as opposed to why I started what I was doing in the first place. Right. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because I feel like a lot of people kind of get caught up in this also because our external environment, there's this pressure to scale quickly, to grow quickly, to do your 6 figures in 6 months or in a month. And you're seeing it around you with your peers. So it's like, okay, I know I have good intentions, but I also need to eat. I need to make money. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on this kind of tug of war that a lot of new entrepreneurs get stuck in.
Yes, I love this question. And just so that the audience knows, my chart, I have only my sacral and my G center defined. So I have a lot of open and undefined centers. And those undefined centers are where we pick up the energy from the environment or other people around us. So the 3 centers that I want to talk about to answer this question are the head center and the root center, because those are pressure centers. Yeah. And then also the heart / ego / will center, depending on what you call it. Right. And I think the biggest thing in terms of pressure, if you look at, so even if you have these centers defined, you can still experience pressure from your environment. But let's say me having those centers undefined, I will pick up the pressure of like these people in my immediate circle. So let's say if I'm following people on social media and they're like, multimillionaires, or they've hit multiple 6 figures, and I will feel that pressure from them of like, oh my God, they did it in 6 minutes. Like I need to do it in 5. Like it's just like, I know I'm exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure people are laughing at that. So you pick up this, like the root center is about picking up this energy of like this pressure to evolve, like deadlines, like get things done, right? A little different than the sacral energy. And the head center is like, what are the answers? How do we figure this out? And it dances with the ajna, right? It's like, there's all this information. What do we do with this information? Like, how do I make this work? I need to relieve this mental pressure. And then you have the heart center that is really about integrity. It's about willpower. And it's the shadow side of it is about like proving energy. So then what we do is, in order to want to make more money, we've got the pressure from the head and root. And then we've got this heart center that's like, okay, I need to alleviate this stress that I'm feeling around not making enough money in my business. So I'm going to throw in all these bonuses and like free sessions and do all these extra things, which is like coming from the heart center, to alleviate that pressure and like gain a sense of worthiness from outside of us. And this is all definitely ties into more if you have these centers undefined or open. And open is like no gates. Defined, yes. Undefined has hanging gates, just so the listeners and audience knows. But I find that, that is huge. And I see that. And I see even let's say with the throat center, like this is our voice. You see like repetitive or copying of, of like people's tonality and beliefs and things that they share. And it's like, is that coming from you or is that coming from your mentors? And you're just projecting that because you think that's going to get you results. So it's really interesting how, I think that it's me having self-awareness where I can like pay attention, like, Kayla, you are overcompensating. You're open, completely open heart center, wants to prove yourself so that you can be worthy and then, get the clients that you think you deserve and so on. So that self-awareness is so key at the beginning of starting your business. And I think I allowed myself to compare and get sucked into the narrative of like, faster is better, right? If you scaled your business quickly, no one would ever judge you for it. I mean, they'd probably be like, how did you do that? Like they would be curious because they'd want to replicate that. But if somebody like myself who takes like 3 years and I have not yet hit 6 figures, I've not yet had a 5-figure month, I'm so transparent about this. It's like, oh, what are you doing wrong, Kayla? Like, why haven't you done that? Oh my God, you're so skilled. Like, why aren't you sold out? Why aren't you booked up? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very interesting. And I just pay attention to that. Like speed sells is what it is.
I love that you're so transparent about that too. And that's one of the things during our original conversation that you're like, I haven't had these months like that. And this is what I had to do to navigate the platform, because I feel like people feel this pressure to just scale. You see it everywhere. And some people are doing like 1.7 million in a month. And I'm just like, wow, what am I doing wrong? But it goes back to this, where your self-worth, like if you're not coaching a lot, like you just said, my friends say, oh wow, you're so talented, what are you doing wrong, maybe? But like our self-worth is sometimes tied into how much we make, how much we grow, how quickly we grow. And I guess what would you say to those that are finding like, okay, so if I'm not seeing clients and I'm not growing, am I a good coach?
So I had this revelation recently that growing a business and being an incredible coach is not the same thing.
I know, we know, but
And I know there's a but I'm just saying, like, that's the first thing, because I've said that before to someone and they were like mind blown. So I just wanted to say that for anyone it like lands for them. They're like, oh my God. And they see how they've like connected the fact that, it's like they're not good unless both are like on par. That's not the truth, right?
I agree.
So I think that the biggest thing that I've had to do is like, I've been really humbled in the last 6 months. Like I shared this with you. I dove in like head first to go full time in my business in September. I quit my full-time job. I just had like casual contracting work that I was doing. And I had this timeline of when I wanted to like hit certain amount of money and so on. And it didn't happen.
Okay.
So here I am, now looking for more work, like full-time work, consistent, stable income, so that I can come back and show up in my business from this place of abundance and not be like forcing things like we talked about. So the point of me sharing this is that I found the most empowering thing to do when it comes to your self-worth is that to imagine, and it might happen for you too, like it did for me, who are you going to be when there's nothing there? When you don't have clients, when you don't hit your goals, when you accumulate debt because you've invested in your business, when you get rejected, when people are not engaging in your content that you spent hours producing, like who are you going to be in those moments? And I feel like when we give our power away and we decide like, oh, once I have a full roster of clients and I'm having consistent months that don't roller coaster at all, then I'm successful. What happens then is we just give our power away. We don't allow the natural rhythms of life, because like life is not linear. You know what I mean? But like somehow we think in business, oh, I'm only good if I'm like consistently making more money, right? And that's not the case. But that's a hard pill to swallow. And I really had to sit with my own feelings and process that, because I was very humbled in the last like 6 months, but that's just my reality. And I want to paint that truth for people and normalize it.
No, and I think it's important that you normalize it. And we'll come back to your story too, because I think there's so much power and weight in there. And I like to tell people too, like I look at it as a journey, like entrepreneurship, business is like this spiritual journey, and it takes time to process, to learn, to understand purpose, and then to send that message out and to scale and grow. Like that overnight success thing that people expect, like I mean, you see it, it's an anomaly, like every once in a while it happens, but I don't see that as the norm. But I feel like people come into this thinking that it is the norm. And I also think that maybe people are not being genuine and not sharing their shortcomings. So it looks like everyone around you is having these successful months when perhaps they're just not speaking to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've definitely had that where, I have friends who are seven-figure business owners. They're multiple six-figure business owners. Like they've been in business for a long time, a short time. And I noticed a theme last year. Some of them got really vulnerable with me and they're like, Kayla, like I made less money this year than I did last year. We're not talking like a couple grand. We're talking like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars less. And then they're freaking out because it's like, oh my God, these people are investing in me because of my results. And if I'm not making the same amount of money, then why would they want to work with me? So there's like, it's like, here we are talking about not having what it is yet that we want. And then there's the other side of like, they have what it is that we want, but then they also have their own struggles. Right. And so I feel like that I was like, oh my gosh. And I had some podcast interviews with them on my channel. And I was like, you need to share your story, like normalize this, that you can fluctuate your income and it can be a safe experience. Like it doesn't have to be this crazy, like expansive thing all the time. Right. Like, where is this pressure coming from? Like, when did we choose to believe that? Like, I think that those are really powerful questions to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you, Kayla, for sharing. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit. I wanted to pivot because I wanted to focus on you and your business. And maybe we can start with your podcast and who you serve, right? I know we did a little bit at the introduction, but maybe let's go to your podcast. Like I listened to a few episodes of your podcast. Absolutely love it. You go in, right? You're very, very raw. I'm going to use the word raw, but I love it because, you speak, you're very vulnerable. You speak to how human design has kind of guided you and just kind of some shadow stuff in there that you speak to that and you make it okay. Like I feel like, and we've talked about this, creating a safe space. Like I guess that's subjective, but I feel like the way you speak to your podcast makes it feel comfortable for people to kind of hear. But I wanted you maybe talk a little bit about your podcast and the message behind it.
Yeah. It's funny because I was marveling about how much I love my podcast channel today. I was just getting really like this month. I told you, I just suddenly all of a sudden have all these podcast interviews, like hence this conversation, and like the downloads are going up and people are messaging me, and I'm like, oh my God, like it's finally clicking, and it's been 3 years, just so that people know. And
Ooh,
yeah,
wow. Wow.
so, and I noticed this pattern in my life. It usually takes like 3 years for things to like suddenly get a snowball effect going. So that's like a pattern of patience for me.
Has
But
it shifted from when you started to where it is now? Like, have you like, okay, I'm gonna change the goal?
so that's the funny thing. So in my human design chart, I'm a non-specific manifester, and I liked, like when we look at the variables of the arrow. So I'm a non-specific manifester. I love to be observed, so I love to share behind the scenes, that kind of thing. And I like to be actively involved in what I'm manifesting. So I feel like my podcast channel is a great example of this, where I didn't have a specific goal. Like I think right now, the day that we record this, there's 235 episodes, and I've interviewed over 55 people from like all
Wow.
over the world, all walks of life. Yeah. And I just started that. My intention of starting the podcast channel was to start when I started my business. So I like started my business January 2019, started my podcast. Like I dropped the first episode March 6th, 2019. And
Okay.
so that whole podcast is like my entire journey, my entire entrepreneurial journey in the last 3 years. And so my goal was really, I think, and it was never an end goal. It was a can I keep integrity and maintain my story and my journey in the most vulnerable, real way possible as I navigate being an entrepreneur. And it started out as like when I started that podcast channel, I was a personal trainer. I wasn't even identifying as a mindset coach at the time. And I just wanted to record and share like what I learned through all my personal development courses and that kind of thing. And then it turned into like actually getting certified and then connecting with other coaches and other entrepreneurs. And then, having multiple seven-figure business owners come on and talk about spirituality or their books. Like it was just
I love it.
amazing. And so it's a passion project, but it's also like this sacred wisdom portal that I love to share it with people. Like I'm constantly resharing episodes. I share them in programs because they're going to complement what I'm teaching in programs. And it's like a slow burn. It's such a generator thing. Like this is just going to like continue on forever. So it's something I'm really proud of. And I'm just like really excited with the direction that it's going in.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You are definitely very talented. I wanted to say that. Excited to see where it goes to. You're welcome. You're welcome. And as we're kind of winding down here, something I always ask my guests when they come on is, what does it mean to go from raw to real for you in terms of entrepreneurship, your experience with human design, and us facing their shadow and coming out on the other side. So I like to hear what people have to say. It could pertain back to your work, to your journey, or what you do. But to go raw to real, what does that mean to you?
First of all, I love the alliteration of like raw to real. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a loaded question and I love it. And I think that I just feel that it's our job. I'll speak for myself. It's my job to create this space where I feel secure to be raw, vulnerable, and real. And it's interesting because I've heard this quote before where it's like, show your scars, not your wounds. And I think that I like agree with this and I disagree with it because I've been very transparent, especially in the last 6 months, how things have been going in my business. And I wouldn't say those are scars. Like these are wounds. they're healing, but they're wounds. And so I just really, it's almost like I go raw to real because I want to normalize the experiences for people. Because, for example, I haven't heard, and we talked about this, where, I haven't heard of anyone else that went all in their business and then it didn't work in their timeline and they had to go get a full-time job.
Yes.
No one, I've never heard anyone share that. So then here I am freaking out the last like 6 weeks. I'm like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. And then I was like catching myself and I'm like, Kayla, like you have to be the one to be raw and real about this because no one else is talking about it. And there's no fucking way that you're the only person who's dealing with this. So I think it's just trusting. And the other thing I do too is I imagine myself, in the future looking back, like, Kayla, how proud can you make yourself to be real in this moment and know that it's going to be temporary?
Yes.
Right? Because everything is temporary. And as much as there's like cringy, like growing pains and so many different ways, and we can't speed up the process, like it does take patience, it's worth sharing the journey as real as possible along the way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I love that. Kayla, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for carving out time. Thank you for speaking your truth. That last piece that you said, like, I know people that they won't share it until things are good. And then they'll come out and say, hey, you know what? When I started, things were hard, but it's only now that I'm here where I can share it. And I think that there's power in your journey and your message and what you're doing, and continue killing it. You're doing awesome. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I loved our conversation.
Thank you.